according to the modes he has acquired. Text 4. Yajante sadvika devan yaksha raksha singrajasaha retan bhuta ganang stanye yajanti tamasa janaha. Translation. Men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods. Those in the mode of passion worship the demons. Those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. Text 5 through 6. Ashastra vihitam goram tapyante ye tapojanaha dhambahankara samyukta kamaraga balanvitaha harshayanta sharirastam bhutagramam achetasaha mam chaivanta sharirastam tanvidyasura nishchayan. Translation. Those who undergo severe austerities and penances not recommended in the scriptures, performing them out of pride, egotism, lust, and attachment, who are impelled by passion and who torture their bodily organs, as well as the supersoul dwelling within, are to be known as demons. Text 7. Aharas tapi sarvasyam trivido bhavati priyaha yagyas tapastata tesham vedam imam shinu. Translation. Even food of which all partake is of three kinds, according to the three modes of material nature. The same is true of sacrifices, austerities, and charities. Listen, and I shall tell you of the distinctions of these. Text 8 through 10. Ayu sattva balarogya sukha priti vivardanaha rasya snigdha stira hridya ahara satvika priyaha. Kadvamala lavanatyushna tikshna rukshna vidahinaha ahara rajasyeshta dukha shoka maya pradaha yatayamam gatarasam puti paryushitam chayat uchishtam api cha medhyam bhojanam tamasa priya. Translation. Foods in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life, purify one's existence, and give strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such nourishing foods are sweet, juicy, fattening, and palatable. Foods that are too bitter, too sour, salty, pungent, dry, and hot are liked by people in the modes of passion. Such foods cause pain, distress, and disease. Food cooked more than 3 hours before being eaten, which is tasteless, stale, putrid, decomposed, and unclean, is food liked by people in the mode of ignorance. Text 11. Apalakang shibir yagyo vidhi drishto yaijate yashtavyam eveti manaha samadhaya sasadvikaha. Translation. Of sacrifices, that sacrifice performed according to duty and to scriptural rules and with no expectation of reward is of the nature of goodness. Text 12. Abhisandhayatu palam dhambartam api chaivayat ijate bharata sheshta tam yagyam virirajasam. Translation. But that sacrifice performed for some material end or benefit or performed ostentatiously out of pride is of the nature of passion, O chief of the Bharatas. Text 13. Vidihinam ashishtanam mantrahinam adakshinam shraddha virahitam yagyam tamasam parichakshate. Translation. And that sacrifice performed in defiance of scriptural injunctions, in which no spiritual food is distributed, no hymns are chanted, and no remunerations are made to the priest, and which is faithless. That sacrifice is of the nature of ignorance. Okay, back to text 3. Translation. According to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living being is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. Purport. Everyone has a particular type of faith regardless of what he is, but his faith is considered good, passionate, or ignorant according to the nature he has acquired. Thus, according to his particular type of faith, one associates with certain persons. Now, the real fact is that every living being, as is stated in the 15th chapter, is originally the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, one is originally transcendental to all the modes of nature. But when one forgets his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and comes into contact with the material nature in conditional life, he generates his own position by association with the different varieties of material nature. The resultant artificial faith and existence are only material. Although one may be conducted by some impression or some conception of life, still originally he is nirguna or transcendental. Therefore, one has to become cleansed of the material contamination that he has acquired in order to regain his relationship with the Supreme Lord. That's the only path back without fear. Krishna consciousness. If one is situated in Krishna consciousness, then that path is guaranteed for his elevation to the perfectional stage. If one does not take to this path of self-realization, then he is surely to be conducted by the influence of the modes of nature. And the word sattva or faith is very significant in this verse. Sattva or faith always comes out of the works of goodness. One's faith may be in a demigod or some created god or some mental concoction. It is supposed to be one's strong faith in something that is productive of the works of material goodness. But in material conditional life, no works of material nature are completely purified. They are mixed. They are not in pure goodness. Pure goodness is transcendental. And purified goodness, one can understand the real nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As long as one's faith is not completely in purified goodness, the faith is subject to contamination by any of the modes of material nature. The contaminated modes of material nature expand to the heart. Therefore, according to the position of the heart, in contact with a particular mode of nature, material nature, one's faith is established. It should be understood that if one's heart is in the mode of goodness, his faith is also in the mode of goodness. If his heart is in the mode of passion, his faith is also in the mode of passion. And if his heart is in the mode of darkness, illusion, his faith is also thus contaminated. Thus, we find different types of faith in this world. And there are different types of religions due to different types of faith. The real principle of religious faith is situated in the mode of pure goodness. But because the heart is tainted, we find different types of religious principles. Thus, according to different types of faith, there are different kinds of worship. Krishnendu Prabhu, do you have any comments? Okay. So we can see that being in the material world is not very nice. Doesn't feel like home. It's not very comfortable. We're subject to so many different kinds of sufferings. Adipotaka, adidaivika, adiadmika. Kleshas, these kleshas or sufferings are constantly pinching us. You know, even if some are fortunate to be born in nice family, high parentage, good country, good community, his mind is still creating many problems, manufacturing many problems for him. So this condition is a suffocation. You know, it's not very nice. It's like drowning. Whatever little pleasure we experience in the material world is simply a momentary lapse in that drowning, like a drowning man coming up for air, but then immediately getting swallowed back into the ocean. Not very nice. It's not the natural condition of the living entity. You know, people are very much stress conditions of life. They're trying to enjoy the body, trying to make the best of the horrible situation, but due to lack of education and just the general all-pervasive ignorance of the Yuga, living entities are generally not very good at being happy. So there's lots of suffering. Trying to serve the mind and the body and get some sense gratification in the process because the plan isn't so well thought out. So many other living entities are suffering as a result. Nature is suffering. Animals are dying all the time. People are trying to satisfy their tongue in this way. So many different processes people are undertaking, so many austerities people are undertaking just to get some peace, working very hard. But even then, they acquire all this money and get a nice house, a nice job, but then all of that is taken away. Tornado is there, disease is there, mental illness is there, so many different things are there. So the situation is not very nice. So if we're intelligent, we see that, we recognize that, and we do our best to try to solve the problem for real. You know. So solving the problem of birth, death, disease, all these different things. These are the real goals of life, not just to make one's life comfortable in this situation. It's not very intelligent because so many things we can't control. We're not the supreme controller, so we can't, so many different things we can't control. So best is to get out of this situation. And we see that there's actually a longing for that. There's a hankering, a lamenting this unfortunate situation. There's a hankering, desire to want to, serve others, help others, serve ourselves. Well, the best way to do that is by Krishna consciousness. By engaging in devotional service, one can actually be fixed in that reality, that highest reality. Amsayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. Saguna sameti taitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. By engaging in full devotional service, one becomes transcendental to the modes of nature, and he comes to the level of Brahman. So Brahman is the preliminary realization and realizing the absolute truth. It's one preliminary step in realizing God. Brahman is God's effulgence. And practically speaking, there's many different processes for trying to realize God. And like jnana yoga is there through mental speculation. One can rise to that platform of Brahman realization. Ultimately has to come down again. Because there's not an understanding of what the nature of there's not a complete understanding of what the nature of the soul is. Nature of the soul is to be active, always active. It's eternal. It just says ajo nitya shashvatam yam purana nahanyate hanyamane sharire. And ajo nityam, the soul is eternal, always active, always engaging activities. So there's no kind of there's no merging with some void or trying to cease one's existence in that way. But simply we just have to adopt this superior method, which is bhakti yogena sevate. And through the bhakti yoga process, the heart becomes cleansed, purified. And one's unfortunate association with the modes of nature, in particular different kinds of bodies, birth after birth, taking on bodies, is ended for real. It doesn't have to take another birth. So this process is very nice and it's very simple. You engage in some devotional service to Krishna, activities in relation to Krishna, Krishna's senses, satisfying Krishna's senses. And it's very nice. Chanting Hare Krishna is so nice. You can see how it's a very scientific process. You chant Hare Krishna, you become purified, and you see firsthand how the transcendental sound vibration enters the heart. completely destroys all of that ignorance there. And then one, in that purified state, one can think about Krishna, one can serve Krishna nicely. And it's nice, it's blissful. It's the uncontaminated state. When we take shelter in the sound vibration, that is our real home. So let's see if we can go on. Yes, Prabhu. Well, it's blissful, but it's a scientific process. There's things that you have to do. There's guidelines, and if somebody doesn't have the patience or the sincerity to apply themselves properly, then what to do? They leave and then they get kicked around by Maya some more and then come back, with some a little bit more sincerity this time to listen to the authorities, the Shastra and the sadhus, and to apply themselves sincerely. In one sense, I mean, there are so many things that we have that we have to know in this process. There's things to do, there's things to not do. And it takes a sufficient amount of brain substance in one sense, just like in the Bhagavatam says, Yajanti hi sumedasa, that those who are intelligent, who have sufficient brain substance, will recognize the value of the Krishna consciousness movement, the Sankirtan movement, and they'll participate in it. So learning, all living entities are learning. They go back in the material world, they do more learning. This place, the material world is a prison house, and it's a correctional facility. It's kind of a school in some ways, like that too, where learning is taking place. It's for one who's cultured in the Vedic life, he doesn't need to learn in that way. I mean, he just hears from the authorities and that's it. But for the conditioned living entities, they are here and they're learning in that way through experience. And everybody's desiring to kind of separate themselves from their mind or their problems. They're recognizing, a lot of people are recognizing, yeah, I grew up with some trauma. I'm conditioned in some way. My mind is a certain way, my ego is a certain way, and they're trying to expand beyond that. And so they turn towards education. Okay, I'll make some growth, some psychological growth. I'll become a doctor. I'll become a lawyer. I'll become this thing, and like that, I'll kind of expand beyond this limit. I'll take another ego and I'll have this thing. Try to heal myself in that way. Or some people go beyond that and they go traveling around the world and visit different cultures, and they go to Mexico and they hang out with the descendants of the Mayans and they take some cacao drink and then they have some his experience, or they go to the Amazon and do some other drink and then do like that and learning. But they're kind of bouncing around back and forth in all these different processes, speculating, not really so satisfied, you know. So some people, yeah, they come to the temple and they're scared because they recognize, whoa, okay, immediately, nothing, nothing establishes the truth like Bhagavad Gita, just right there, second chapter. Uh, Natvevaham jatu nasham natom neme janadipa najaivan vivishami sarvavayam ataparam. Never was a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings. So Krishna immediately establishes the objective existence of the soul, you know, and that is what everybody's looking for. They're looking for this reality to this is the solution to everybody's problems, because there's an identity crisis. I don't know who I am. And nobody likes to not know who they are. Nobody likes to be lost. You know, we all want to be found. We all want to find out who we are. And not Krishna speaks so boldly and so plainly. And this is the highest manifestation of compassion, you know, because everybody's hankering after this. I want to be situated in that firm reality. Who am I? You know, that eternal, immutable, unchanging, blissful reality, and know for sure who I am and know exactly what I'm doing and what my purpose is and be fulfilled. And immediately Krishna gives that. You can open up any other books and it's all, there's some semblance of truth there, truths and things like that, but it's all very not, it's all very, you know, covered over and complicated and, you know, sin. But Krishna just very firmly says it. You're not your body. You're not your mind. You're a soul. There's a little particle. It's like, it's so scientifically established. It's so nice, you know, that it's not just some like, yeah, I just believe that you're this thing, you know. A lot of Buddhists, they talk about this. There was one Buddhist who came here 2 Sundays ago, and I was talking to him, and he was saying, you know, yeah, you know, the self. A lot of times we hear this term, this the self, but he said that actually in Buddhism, this form of Buddhism he was practicing at least, they don't accept the self. They accept that there are many selves. The self is constantly changing. You know, there's no fixed understanding of the self. You know, and the issue is that they haven't accepted higher transcendental knowledge. So they're situated in their mind and their intelligence, and they're trying to understand the nature of reality, absolute reality, from a material plane. So it's difficult, and they come to the conclusion that there's no fixed self. It's all self is constantly changing. But it's because they're looking at their body and their mind and their intelligence. And we also agree those things are changing, you know? Those things are changing. But who's looking at those things? That person hasn't changed, you know? But in order to realize that, we need to hear Krishna's words, you know? And we need to um, understand them. So everybody's in want of this, you know, and therefore they're doing crazy things like saying, yeah, you know, my pronouns are like this and I'm like that, and you know, I'm changing their body, changing their mind, changing everything all the time, constantly changing everything, trying to rearrange matter, material nature in every different way just to be satisfied, but then going on taking birth after birth in this place and not satisfied. So somebody may come in here and they might even recognize, whoa, wait a second. Yeah. I'm being hit, I'm being offered the chance to embrace my true identity, this spiritual nature, this that I am actually a particle of divine consciousness within this body, that I have an objective factual existence, you know, something which is immutable, eternal. It's situated right there in the body, you know, that whether I think I'm this or I'm that or I'm this, I'm that, that actually I'm always that thing that doesn't change. Krishna establishes that very scientifically. It's like, it's a fact, just like the sun. The sun is there. Some clouds are covering the sun, but then you can't see the sun, but then the sun is still there. Clouds move, the sun is there, you know. So the soul is there, always there. It's covered over by the clouds of the mind and the body, which are changing, sure, these different things. The soul is there. So they're seeing that, okay, I'm being hit with this truth, but you know, for some, it seems daunting and very, very far away that like if I'm attached, I got the false ego and I'm attached to these different things, then in one sense, the scariest thing would be for me to, you know, actually turn towards that reality because that will dissipate all that darkness. But I'm attached to that darkness. You know, it's my sense gratification. It's the thing that I've been taking shelter in lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So then they see that and they run or something and, you know, get a little more purified and inquiring a little bit more into the spiritual process and then come back when they're ready to actually adopt devotional service and embrace their identity and embrace the set of activities that come with that identity. And, you know, peaceful.
Can I comment on that line?
Yes, please.
Um, there's this devotee, his name is Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and he said that the temples, ISKCON centers are like a crying school. So everybody in the mature world is crying, but the devotees in the crying school learn who to cry for or who to cry to. And when we learn that and we participate in that process, crying for Krishna, then he helps us. And if we don't learn to cry for Krishna, then we always cry for Maya. And he has nothing to do except for give us what we want. So I like that phrase they use as a simple process. Because really, actually, it's only a turning of the heart to Krishna, a turning of the face. Prabhupada wrote, "Wonder thy ways to turn our face." It's amazing how he gets us to, do a 180, by the blessings of the devotees and certain lessons and from within the heart and from within the Gita. So many wonderful things. But the process is essentially that, just turning towards him again in that mood of helplessness. And Prabhupada describes in a really beautiful purport how he started this Krishna consciousness movement in a helpless way. That's how he described it. He said, started this movement in a humble way, a helpless way. What is that helplessness? It is dependence on Krishna. So when we come to the temple or to ISKCON or to Krishna consciousness, to Srila Prabhupada, to the Bhagavad Gita, we're meant to take away that helplessness, which is actually the essence of our identity. We're just a spark of the fire. The spark is actually helpless. I mean, it goes out instantaneously with separation from the fire. Has no longevity without intimate association with the fire. So we are helpless. We're meant to learn that and then turn and harmonize with that reality. And like you mentioned, I thought it was very nice. There's a certain lifestyle which actually is in harmony with that identity, eternal identity. And that's called sadachar. It's a science. It's not arbitrary. And Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he loved this. He loved this stuff. He really appreciated this, how the devotee who is realizing and his eternal identity as a tiny particle endowed with divine consciousness, a tiny spiritual spark, he very much appreciated it. And he said that Sanatana Goswami was beautified by the ornaments of Vaishnav etiquette. And the Goswamis laid it out how the sadhakas who want to be, who actually want to live like in reality or be themselves, the most authentic version of themselves, how they will conduct themselves while they're conditioned. What's amazing is that when they do that, then they're not conditioned. They, by participating in pure devotional service as passed down by the acharyas, the authorities, they're not conditioned, they're liberated. So it's like the devotee, he understands that the highest principle is to remember Krishna and never forget him. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. Because that's what I do in who I really am. I'm always thinking about Krishna and how to serve him better. And I'm always desiring never to forget him also. Or I'm trying not to. And the rules and regulations for the sadachar, how we conduct ourselves, sometimes it's suffocating to the conditioned souls. Because, like you mentioned beautifully, I like my false sense of self. You know, I don't want to turn towards Krishna, because then what is the essence of that false sense of self? That I'm the enjoyer, I'm the controller, and, I'm the proprietor. That's the problem. We are none of those three things. And everybody who's on the false ego platform thinks that they're every one of those things. And that's the problem. So this movement is meant to get to the point. So we don't spend as much time with the peripherals as much as we deal with that. And it makes it sting. It really stings sometimes. But like you mentioned, if we're fully engaged in devotional service, there's no question of being conditioned. So you're just your false identification with that false identity as the enjoyer and the controller and the proprietor is automatically cut instantly. So then what's left? Blissful, eternal, knowledgeable. So that's the idea, full engagement, full engagement in devotional service. So it just depends on intensity. How intensely are we staying engaged in Krishna service? Because if we stay fully engaged, if our intensity, if our purpose is strong, we can execute bhakti yoga very easily. But if our purpose is weak, Maya is very, very strong. And those are just some things I thought about. Thank you.
Thanks, Prabhu. That was nice. Jai. Yeah, Krishna is factually the enjoyer, the provider, and the controller. An interesting thing about the living entity is his constitutional position is as the servant, And the interesting thing is that even when he's thinking that he's the enjoyer, controller, yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, this question is from Magadari. I was just wondering, how can we intensify our service? That's it.
Sure, yeah. Prabhu, could no.
So this is another point which we kind of stick on in this society of devotees, is that the intensity of service, or practically speaking, is based on how much instruction we're willing to take. So if every action, thought, word, everything is according to the instructions, then to that degree, we are intense about devotional service, because we found through the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna literally describes that in order to conduct devotional service, you have to do so with those who are engaged in devotional service. So it's a type of an experiment, like you said. How much are we willing to, to go for it? There's certain procedure. So that's the procedure. And it's very comprehensive. It's very comprehensive. It's 24 hours. That's how comprehensive it is. And Prabhupada described to his disciples in the early days, first they thought, oh, just chant Hare Krishna, that's it. Yes, that's the ultimate instruction, but it's not the only instruction. So you can take that instruction. There's also other instructions too. So then the instruction comes, okay, now also do some hearing, take some knowledge, try to take it submissively, apply it, consider it with your intelligence. See if it checks out with your findings in this world. And then they say, come for association, So like that, the series of the devotional service is actually extending. So Prabhupada describes that, there's three things: strict, serious, and sincere. So our intensity is based on those things. Those are the things that we can control, right? How serious we are means, how much we respect parampara, or we respect the words of Sri Krishna, right? Strictness means how much we're willing to do the austerities, to follow those instructions, to set aside anything and everything which is actually distracting me from following the instructions, And then there's the sincerity, which is something that it's up to us as well. And actually, there's no substitute for sincerity. If we're not sincere, what can Krishna do? He wants to help us so much, And actually, what's very beautiful about the parampara system is that with every instruction comes the empowerment to follow it. With every instruction from this transcendental parampara system, the potency is also there to follow an instruction, which is just, you got to lean into it. You got to become helpless and rely. And then that's the system, because you realize it's not my strength. It's the strength of the Vani. It's the strength of the instructions, which is actually propelling me towards executing the duty. And then we become free from false identification with the action. So seriousness, strictness, and sincerity. So this sincerity, it's a decision. How much do we want Krishna? And what's amazing is that you can get all these things by association. So if you associate with Prabhupada, who is sincere, serious, and strict about the process of Krishna consciousness, then you yourself will become serious, strict, and sincere. And that means your intensity of devotional service will be amplified, because now you're more strict with how you use your mind, your body, your words. You're more serious about attaining spiritual advancement and pleasing the spiritual master. You're more sincere in your purpose. So that's that purpose side. Basically, the how question is association. So, but that, how to associate all the time is to always be under direction. You know, because Vani association is more potent than Vapu. So if I'm always, if my activities, my energy is always being, I'm allowing myself to be instrumental. I'm allowing myself to be instrumental to the will of somebody who's pure, whose intention is more pure, whose knowledge is more ripened, you know, then I can be very valuable. And that's when I get free from the false ego. That's when I can be more intense in my devotional service. So those are some thoughts on it. Intensity.
I haven't. Yeah, I was thinking. We have to use our intelligence and our since we're all good at finding faults, you know, and so we can use that to look within our heart, you know, look within and become disgusted, you know. And when you become disgusted, then you just, okay, well, I have to do something about this now, you know. Not necessarily become disturbed by what you see or depressed and beat yourself down and then you just become disgusting, but you have to become disgusted by what you see. You know, this is horrible. I'm in this filth. This is disgusting, you know? I gotta just become disgusted. And when you become disgusted by what's there, then you take the proper means necessary, you know, which is you have to inject the holy name into your consciousness, into your heart, you know. The Tivrena Bhakti Yogena, like you have to be powerful with it. You have to attention, chant with attention. Attention means at tension. It's got to be tense. I mean, this is like, I have to do something about this. You know, I have to be attentive. I have to chant with the utmost attention, you know, and deal with the problem right now. And that's the way to do it, is to chant with attention, you know, and chant with that might. Chanting has to be very mighty. Consciousness has to be very mighty, and you have to beat the mind. You literally just beat the mind down, shut it up. You know, like Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj says, beat the mind 100 times a day at night and 100 times in the morning. You know, beat the mind. So that's one thing that I was thinking of. We have one more comment over here.
Hi, Krishna. I think I wanted to add to that question. That's also, I think, like similar to what Radha Damodar said, is like for me that helps intensify my service is being completely honest to myself and Krishna about all the flaws that I see within myself. So sometimes I like to talk out loud about like, wow, I have this issue and this flaw and this judgment and this dirtiness inside my heart. And I always find that when I open up to Krishna within when I'm doing japa, something like that, I always feel reciprocation from Krishna. And there's just something very mystical that happens every single time when I'm very honest about like, yeah, you know what, I messed up, or this feeling inside me is wrong, or the way I view this and this and this, and my attitude I have during this service is not very nice. So like a big point for me recently is just having a lot of honesty. And I don't know if what you said, Radha Damodar, is has to do with what I just listened to the other day. It was a lecture from Prabhupada. I think he said his guru, but he was saying the same point. You had to beat the mind in the morning at night. But I like how he specifically said you got to take a shoe or a broomstick and beat it over and over. Which I really liked. That was reassuring. So I think just constantly remembering like it's just the mind and being honest with yourself has really helped me intensifying my service.
Jai. Thank you guys. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.